Hi, this is needlepointers.com. Today I'd like to show you how to make this loopy stitch with the new finger looping yarn. This yarn has the loops built into it already, so it makes it very easy to knit, and you don't need to know how to knit, and you don't need knitting needles. This is a new stitch that I came up with, and I'm using it to make a fluffy rug for my bathroom. I think this will turn out really nice and fluffy. You could use it for other things too, this loopy stitch for other items too. So let's get started. What you will need for this project is skeins of the looping yarn. This yarn I have here is by Red Heart. There is also other brands of this loop yarn, and any brand will work with this new stitch. I do recommend we have to combine the two colors together, and there's a lot of loops involved. So I recommend that you use one color for the base color and another color for the loops. For example, in my loopy rug that I'm making, you can see on the back, you can see all of the lighter colored looping yarn here, the single color yarn. And then I decided to use this variegated yarn for the actual loops. And I recommend that because when you're doing all the loops, it can get confusing of which loops are your loops up here, which loops are the loops here, and which loops are your working yarn. So if you're using a different color for your working yarn, then you'll be able to tell the difference easier and not get mixed up on which are which. If you'd like to see a photo tutorial on how to make this stitch with step-by-step instructions, or you would like to purchase supplies for this project, please click the iCard or the link in the description of this video to go to our website, needlepointers.com, where we will have all of those things. For this tutorial, I'm using this aqua color, the solid aqua, as the base color and the base color yarn. And this is where we're going to be using it's going to end up underneath. This color, multicolor yarn, is going to be the loops coming through. So for this, I'm just going to do 10 loops and work with that so that I can show you how to make this stitch. After you've counted out your 10 loops, take your working yarn and put 2 loops through each work loop in this foundation chain of loops. So I'll call this the working yarn, and these are the foundation. They're actually both working yarns, I guess, because you're kind of using them both. But these are the loops, and this is the foundation. So keep inserting 2 loops into each loop in the chain. So I'm taking 2 and inserting it through. Two more, insert through. And I try to pull them up so that I can tell these are my loops and this is my foundation. And you'll see when we do the next row how these loops are secured down so that they won't fall out when you're using your item after making this. Oop, we got 2 more. And you want to make sure that you don't miss any loops in your working yarn here or in your foundation chain either as you're going through this. Okay, so now I have all the loops through. And if you're wondering why we put 2 loops through each of the loops, it's to make the looping, the rug or whatever you're making, more full and complete. I started trying it with just 1 loop in each sticking up, and it just didn't seem full enough to me. Now you could do it where you put 2 loops in one and then 1 loop in the next and 2 loops in 1 loop if you don't want it so full. You can play with it. You could even just do 1 loop in each. So now in order to secure these loops so that they won't come out later and they'll be secured into your rug or other item, for this next row, what we do is I take this working colored yarn and I stick the loop from back to front through the main loop in front of the 2 loops that I stuck in there. So here's my 2 loops that I put in through the first working chain. I stick the next loop in front of those 2 loops through the main loop, then put the loop through the 2 loops. So now they're going to be secured. And I continue working across with my working yarn, doing this in each loop. So again, here's my next loop in my working yarn. These are my 2 loops in the next one. We put the working yarn loop through in front of these 2 loops and through the loop that they were put through. Pull that up, kind of put these 2 loops together. Now take that loop, stick it through those 2 loops. So here's the next loop. And I try to keep the loop that I'm sticking through to stick out. And I try to pull the 2 loops that are sticking up back. So that way, when we do the next row, the loops that you're going to work through are more obvious. But this is also why I suggested to use separate colors, like a slightly different color or a different color for your foundation than for your loops, because it can get really confusing when you have lots of loops and everything here. So let's do this one more time, or a few more times. So here's the next 2 loops that I put through the foundation chain. I'm going to take the next loop in my working yarn, stick it through in front of these 2 loops, put those 2 loops together, and now take that same loop and stick it through the 2 loops to secure them. So now they won't go anywhere because that yarn is now secured into the project. So we continue to work all the way across doing the same thing. Put your working yarn through in front of the 2 loops, then put them through the 2 loops. Put it through the 2 loops. I found it's best to count your loops, these, after you've gone through all of them, to make sure that you have the right count and you didn't drop any or you didn't get extras in there. So I'm going to continue to work through the next few across my 10, and then I'll be back. So now I've completed the first row. I have all of the loops secured in there, and this is the start of the second row. So the loops that are sticking out in the light aqua color, those are my working yarn, and I counted them. So I have 10, like I did before, so I know I got the right number. So I'm pushing back these loops out of the way so I don't get confused, and the next row will take 2 loops again from this working yarn and put them through each of the loops that are sticking out and work your way back across. So I take 2 loops and stick it through the base loop. 2 more loops, through the base, and continue all the way across. Okay, so now I have my 2 loops put through each of the loops again. Next, take your base yarn and we're going to do the same thing again. Take the loop, the next loop, put it through the previous row of loop in front of the 2 loops that you just put through, and then put the loop through those 2 loops. Continue with the next one, put the loop through, and then through those 2 loops. So as you can see, this could get really confusing if you're trying to use the same yarn for both the base and the loops. So having the different yarn is better so that you can see where your loop is that's holding the 2 loops, and stick your working yarn loop through and then stick the working yarn through the 2 loops to secure them. So I'm going to continue to work all the way across. The first couple rows can be a little challenging, confusing with this, but I found that once I got going with it, I was able to see the loops and figure out what I was doing. So at least give it a try for a couple rows before you give up on this, because it really makes a nice fluffy rug. I will have a video tutorial on how to make that rug that I showed you that I started. I haven't finished it quite yet, but I will be doing a video tutorial on how to make that full rug, and it will be coming out in a future video. So there's the second row finished, and you can see again I've pushed my loops back and I've pulled all of my working base yarn loops out so that they're obvious and sticking out. So that's it for this stitch. You just keep continuing by putting 2 loops through each of these base yarn loops, and then working across by putting the base yarn then up through the front and through the 2 loops to secure them. And you can continue making your whole project. This is going to be my bath rug that I started, and I will do a video on how to make this rug in a future video. I hope you enjoyed learning how to do this new loop stitch using the loop yarn. You can keep up with us by subscribing to our YouTube channel and by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Visit our website by clicking the iCard to find the links to follow us. If you are on Pinterest, pin our projects to your wall. This is a great way to keep track of your favorite projects. Visit our website, needlepointers.com, to find lots of other loop yarn projects and tutorials.